Thanks for joining us at another Dragon-Fall chat. We have Chris from Slow Death Games to talk to us about Starbreach. With me, as always, poor guy, is Josh, my co-host. So,
Hello.
um, Josh has actually got some questions about Starbreach, so I'm gonna let him take lead here. Take it away.
I've read the free PDF version of the rules, and I'm curious to start with how what else is in the full rule book? How does it
Uh,
expand?
in the full rulebook, there's scenarios which aren't in the free PDF, which gives you more ways to play the game rather than just lining up and shooting at each other.
I
Okay.
love a good scenario. And does it have? So I'm sorry. Also, I shouldn't have done that to you, Josh. Chris, what is Starbreach?
Starbreach, Starbreach is a model agnostic science fiction skirmish game. It has 20 factions, which they give you a description of the faction, what the models are in the faction, or not sorry, what the models, but what the troop types are in the faction, and then you decide what those are based on the description and use whatever models you have in your collection. There's a lot of them that you can look at and easily go, okay, I understand what this one is, because there are people who have a lot of miniatures already, whether they're Star Wars or Games Workshop or whatever. So a lot of the lists you can look at and immediately go, okay, yeah, I know what that is. But they're written in a way that they're broad enough that you can go, well, I like the idea of this list, but I would really like to use these miniatures because in my mind, the Hive list is not a bunch of insect aliens, but instead maybe a bunch of octopus aliens that share a hive or whatever.
No, that's cool. Yeah, like it doesn't have to be a Starship Troopers and other people that have infringed upon their IP that would sue you for infringing upon their IP, as it were. There's new stuff in there. As much as science fiction and genre stuff can have like new concept, it's got like it's not all just the way you said it right now isn't incorrect. But it's not like a reskin to just juke out of the way of IP lawyers. Like there is some creativity involved with many of the factions that I find appealing. What's your go-to faction when you, Chris, play?
Legion of Man is my go-to faction.
Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about that in the other video, kind of the overview.
Yeah.
And it seems like you, in particular, like it whenever, when you did it yourself, do a different spin on what you would automatically assume that faction would be. So you like the playground of, hey, these guys are generally robot guys, but I've reskinned them as such because this is the way, like, this is my creative spin on it. And like, do you have some examples of like fun ones that people have done, and like, is that a part of the whole appeal?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things that people have done. There's one guy who is playing with. They're not Legos, but they're similar to Legos. I don't know the name of the toy, and he's using those.
I have no children, so
yeah, I do, but I don't know what these things are called. So he's using those. There's another guy recently who we saw using the. I don't remember the name of the GW's new fantasy dwarves, the ones that are all armored and look like steampunk.
Josh, I
don't know what they're called, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So there's a guy who just built a list out of those, and he made them all robots.
Okay,
Instead of being dwarves in armor, they're robots that are roaming the universe. The people who are doing Hive have come up with lots of interesting things. There's been a lot of interesting Hive stuff. For my Legion of Man, I'm using Quar miniatures. Zombie Smith makes them. Yeah, because I love those miniatures.
Quar's War, man. Yeah, no, those little adorable anteaters.
Yeah, they look like goofy little anteaters, but I wrote a little piece of fiction about them just for myself that they somehow appeared in the universe out of nowhere, and everybody thought they were goofy and ridiculous, but they were actually vicious killing machines and have started taking over planets. But they're still goofy looking. And also in my mind, their language sounds like like somebody from the Bronx. Like even though they're speaking another thing, like their accent sounds like they're from the Bronx. Just because I thought that would be even funnier as a idea.
I always thought of them as what was the puppet show that had the big trash monster in it? Started with an F, I think.
Oh, Fraggles?
Fraggles.
Yeah.
I always thought that they would be like little Fraggles. I don't know why. Yeah.
As far as I can tell, they're loosely based on. Do you know the artist Bodhi? He did like a Cheech Wizard and that kind of stuff. Anyway, he did a comic book in the 70s called Cobalt 60 and had these guys that were war lizards, and they look pretty much exactly like the Quar, except they had lizard heads instead of anteater heads.
And but less of a French warfare World War I aesthetic. Did you like do any bit bashing to them or anything like that, or they still have bolt action rifles?
No, they still have bolt action rifles, and yeah, I made them as is.
That is fun. Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of stuff, like hearing stories like that, it adds an extra like spice level to the mix that is Starbreach. So the actual gameplay component, though, like are we rolling? Because I do see that you've got dice for sale on the site. So
yeah,
tell me a little bit about those, because those are the like initiative dice, or
they're order dice.
Order dice.
So when you're setting up and between the turns and whatnot, you put all the dice into a bag. So you have one die for each of your models. Your opponent has one die for each of their models. Shake them up and you pull them out. So if you have green dice and I have red dice, we pull one out. Oh, it's green, so I get to move a model and do my stuff. Red one, whatever. So those dice have symbols on each side. And as you put your model down and say, hey, I'm doing this thing, you put that symbol next to them. So that way like, oh, what did this guy do this turn? Oh, he's healing himself, or he ran, so he can't do these actions. So they're basically just, those dice are basically just activation counters, I guess is a good way to explain it. They're totally not required. You can use any D6s because, all of those symbols are, have a 1 through 6 associated with them. So you don't need them. You don't have to buy them. They're just nice to have.
I'm a big fan of that kind of randomization, and sometimes you get a little bit screwed if your opponent will draw 3 or 4 dice out in a row, and you don't get to do much.
Well, there is a rule for that. After you've drawn three dice of the same color, your opponent gets to decide which one comes out next. So you don't have to choose one of your own. So like if I was playing against you and you'd pulled 3 of yours in a row, I could say like, oh, hey, make your next guy go. So that way I've got a bunch of guys that can go at once, or I can say, I'm tired of you, shooting at me. I need to take this objective. So I better take a turn.
That's a cool twist. I do feel like it's that randomization sort of lends itself to telling good stories too.
Yeah, and I can't speak for all the people who play, but when we play, we definitely have a story that we're doing. So like the scenario, we'll have a scenario, but we'll have some sort of story like why are we fighting? What is the bigger reason that we're fighting? And then I'm not a very good writer, but I like to write fiction about what happened. And so I've been keeping track of that, and I'm kind of building a universe of my own based on the miniatures I have and the miniatures my friends have.
You beat yourself up as a writer, but you sent me that little Quar piece, and I thought it was a delightful little piece of fiction, man. I actually didn't put 2 and 2 together that it was those Quar. I thought you were just like pulling an alien name out of a hat, and since it wasn't being published, you don't Google it and like worry about like that kind of stuff. But now it warms my heart that much more. So, but yeah, you shouldn't beat yourself up. I mean, especially if you're doing like flavorful campaign stuff. I think that's the reason for the season, man. Like I don't like just net listing and just seeing who's the better commander, like I think you need to have a real reason for it to even matter. Which is why a lot of the larger games just lose me, because I'm just like, it's not intriguing to me. So how many? And I know there's kind of like sub factions and stuff. How many factions are there in the game?
There's 20 in
20?
there's 20 factions in Starbridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot. And they each get about they each get a page in the book for their
Yeah,
own
it's a
stuff?
page or two. Yeah, a page or two in the book.
And then about that many scenarios and some like other ideas. So how many pages is the book in general, the software?
It's 126, I think.
It's good. It's a good length, man.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. And so you started working with Elliot on this.
Elijah.
Oh, God, why did I do that again? I haven't met him, so until I meet him, he's just a figment of my imagination. So I apologize, Elijah. What's that?
You got the E.
I got an E. Yeah. There's an E and an L in there, and then I just lost the plot after that point. So, and is he the only writer on that project?
He is the only writer. He wrote the entire game. Wrote all the scenarios. Yeah, he is a machine. He pumped that out.
So going from you being the Wild in the Streets main guy to being kind of a publisher of this one, is that an interesting transition for you? I know you're excited about the game.
No, not at all. It wasn't a weird transition at all. And I think that it's maybe because of the background in punk and hardcore, where everything is very cooperative, kind of prepared me for that. And we treat Slow Death Games as more of like a punk record label than a game company. Like there's we pick the people we want to work with. We're not worried about if something is going to be a big seller. We want to make something that the person who is doing it is excited about, and it's coming from the heart. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to make this because I think it'll sell this many units. And
you did put out some records.
I did put out
records. I put out 4 myself, and I know exactly what you're saying with like, it's such a similar pipeline. It's got the highs and lows of working with artists in general, and it has got like especially with the DIY or die aesthetic, man. Like if you're not willing to do the brunt of the work, you're just gonna sink,
Yeah.
Like, the more you can do, like I know it would, like you and I aren't sculptors, but it would be fantastic if we had been or were,
Yeah.
So it's so with that, like how did so he approached you about it, or you approach him?
No, actually, no, I approached him. And the reason I approached him is because I had been seeing Starbreach, because it was just a PDF that he had made, and he was just a guy making a game because he loves games, and he had no plans to do anything with it. And here's a free PDF. Do what you want with it. I can't remember if I emailed him or sent him a Facebook message or something, but like, I'd been following along, and I was just like, hey, I really like this. And I see you're going to be at this convention in LA. So I'm going to drive up so I can meet you and see the game and whatnot. And that was the first time we met, because he lives overseas majority of the year. I think he comes back to the US once a year. I'm not sure how often.
So the stars aligned and you got that meeting in, pretty much.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the meeting wasn't like, hey, I want to publish your game. It was just, I like what you do and I want to meet you. Like, it's the same thing. Like, when you're in a hardcore band, like you go see a band because like, hey, I really like this band, and I want to meet the people in this band and see them play, and we could potentially be friends. Not like, hey, I want to take over what you're doing, which I didn't. I'm not taking over what he's doing, just publishing. Yeah. And so I met him. We got along really well, and he has a background. He played in some bands, and so like within 10 minutes, it was like being lifelong friends. Because we had so many similar things in our background, like playing in bands, putting out records, playing miniatures games, whatnot. So we got along really well. And then I think maybe like a month after that, he's like, okay, I'm going to do a book. I'm going to do a Kickstarter. And so I gave him some advice on it. I didn't shove myself into him like, hey, I've done some Kickstarters. Here's my advice. And his Kickstarter didn't go well. And I think it's because he is an artist and he's got the artist vision, not a business vision. Not that I'm a business guy, but like I've done some things. And it didn't go as well as he hoped it would. So he stopped it, like 2 weeks into it, and was like, okay, I'm just going to regroup and I'm going to figure out what I did wrong. And that's when I approached him and said, hey, I've done stuff in the past, like put out records, released a game of my own, did these things. So how about I take over the business side and you just do the creative side? And that's how that partnership started.
That sounds like a nice agreement that a lot other people should come to. Like, I know, yeah, like it's kind of good to be like, okay, maybe I don't have the business aesthetics. Help me out with that, and just be the artist. I've seen several companies kind of crash and burn because they just thought that they could, if you can't manage your finances personally, you should be having someone else. Things like that.
Yeah. So so we did a Kickstarter because his Kickstarter was going to be for a hardcover book, which I love hardcover books because I have a giant library of art books that are all hardcover. But for game stuff, I don't think that hardcovers are really a good thing to be carting around when you're gaming.
Sure.
So we did a softcover book. We changed the layout a little bit, and then also did some order dice, which again are not required for the game but are handy. So we put that Kickstarter together, and it went really, really well. Like I thought we'd sell 100 books, and I was going to be happy with that. Mm-hmm. And be like, hey, we sold 100 books, and maybe we'll sell a few more because because of conventions and whatnot. But the Kickstarter went way beyond what we thought it would do.
Fantastic.
So we were all very stoked about that.
We have several Star Breach softcover books. Well, I guess I don't know how in the future this is when you're watching this video, but for the Dragon-Fall 2020 charity event, we will be raffling some off. So every subscriber gets a free chance in that giveaway to this channel, of course. And then every $1 given to the Dragon-Fall Charitable Foundation. As long as you put your information in there. If you do it as an anonymous, I can't track that unless I guess you just email me after. But make sure you give us your information, as scary as that is, and you could win one of the delightful hooks, which I have a stack of. But and thank you, Chris, for sending those. You really didn't need to do that. I appreciate that. That was before we even talked about doing this video. Are you getting any kind of like promotion, as it were, from the 50 people that will watch this? But I'm excited for what Starbreeze has done, and you're talking about like what's the plans for Starbreach's future?
Well, there is a faction in the game called the Hunters, which is a small model count. I mean, the game's small model count anyway. You have somewhere between 6 and 12 models per side. Hunters have between 3 and 4, and Hunters are basically bounty hunters, and so each one has more wounds and is like an individual as opposed to like a war band where it's a bunch of grunts. And so we're doing the PDF of this is already out. You can download it from starbreach.com, but we're doing an expansion called Starbreach Hunters, which focuses on just the Hunters faction. So you can do co-op and solo games with just the Hunters.
So why'd you choose to do the Hunters as is that going to be other factions that you're going to try to do the same treatment for, or is there something specific about them that kind of pulled to you?
Well, again, this is all Elijah since he writes the rules.
Yeah.
But the Hunters are different from the other factions that they have a bunch of different rules. They have instead of just having one die in the bag, they have multiple dice, so they have more of a chance of doing different things. And the Hunters just fit the best for that. Like if you want to do a co-op game, you would think like, okay, it's going to be me and my 3 friends playing, and we're each going to be a bounty hunter, and we're going after whatever big bad monster.
So that's kind of like a Inquisitor Planet 28 spin on it. I dig that, man. Like that's fun.
Yeah, and there's a free PDF of it. It's still in the alpha stage. It's not ready for publication, so we've got it for free on the website. And there's 4 scenarios, I believe. in that PDF.
So that's like co-op scenarios, or that could be used for whatever.
They're co-op or solo scenarios.
Got it. Okay.
That's
I mean, solo play in 2020 is
very,
a
very
beneficial thing.
important.
Yeah.
Josh, you got any Star Breach questions? Putting you on the spot.
No, you kind of covered everything. Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited to check out these solo rules because that's the only way I ever play games anymore.
I know, man. I mean, I used to. Josh lives like 30 miles away from me, about. But this is the longest we've gone, and a lot of people are the same way. That we would have. His basement is and he's got a good gaming area. You can tell he's got a nice setup there with all the instruments and stuff. His gaming stuff's pretty good too. I won't dox him, so he will get robbed. But that was always like a every 2-month highlight is going to Josh's and petting his pups and playing games. And I'm sure Star Breach would have been on that agenda if it wasn't for this. So solo play, you're just gonna have to zoom me into that thing, man. Chris, what would you like to? So what's the best way to? And I know I ask this every video, but someone might be only watching this one. If you want to support Star Breach or Slow Death Games, what's the best way to do that?
You can buy our products at slowdeathgames.bigcartel.com. You can join us on Facebook. We have a Star Breach fan page where people talk about their games and show off their miniatures. We have the Slow Death Games Facebook page. We also have Instagram, Slow Death Games, and *_breach.
Okay. And if you go just to slowdeathgames.com, there is a link to the store.
Yeah, there is a link to the store. Yeah,
good, because some people are going to hear Big Cartel and then their eyes are just going to glaze over. So you can just go to slowdeathgames.com and get all of that flavor. So
yes.
Let's siphon them in.
And also the other thing is there is a free PDF at starbreach.com. It has all of the rules you need to play. The only thing, it doesn't have any of the artwork, it doesn't have any of the scenarios, but it has all the rules you need to play. So even if you never want to buy anything, you can still play our game.
And we did do on this channel, we did a flip through for the giveaway of it's pretty brief. It's only like a 10-minute little thing. And so if you want to get an idea of what the full shebang is, you can check out that video. Get the idea if that's I mean, it's a $20 nice softcover book. It's worth the investment, in my opinion. But if you're curious or just not sold, or you just want to listen to me ramble for 10 minutes, that's your next destiny. So, and I did do that one late at night. So apologies to Chris.
Yeah, I watched that video. That was a good video.
I did it. I woke up. All right. So as an aside, so sometimes in COVID, sometimes I'm just waking up at like 2 a.m. and then I just close the door of my office and I just did some flip throughs. So if I'm rambling, it's that was one of them. So, but I find if I wanted to, if I'm awake, I want to be doing something full steam ahead. So, it's not like I have a weird studio. It's just a office full of cat hair. So, but yeah, Chris, thanks for joining us, letting us know. So this video will go up in October. I really appreciate your time. I'm very grateful for the stuff that you sent over for and I think people are excited to get in their hands. So
yeah, thank you for having me, and I'm glad that we can help contribute to your charity.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.